for those who lost their lives on 9/11/2001.
And Bo Burtis is the Director of Parks and Recreation of Franklin Township.
I'd like to start with the presentation of the colors by Boy Scout Troop 113, Boy Scout Troop 154, Cub Scout Pack 195, and the Franklin Township Police Department Honor Guard.
Detail, halt. Left, face.
If you would please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this point, I would like to invite Karen Eula up to sing the national anthem.
Detail, order, arms.
At the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Detail, order, arms. Right, face. Forward, march.
Thank you, everyone. Welcome as we sit in reverence for those folks we lost on 9/11/2001, but also for the folks who stood up and gathered together to bring our community and our great country back together again. At this time, I'd like to invite Reverend Dr. Tina Numela for the invocation.
Let us approach the one or which is divine to all of us. Holy One, we remember that fateful day when many died and many were injured and many succumbed to illness at a later stage. Remember the families and loved ones of the victims of 9/11. As we remember them, we also give thanks for the bravery and sacrifice of those aboard the planes that crashed, those on the ground who rescued others, the first responders, firefighters, police officers, anyone who risked their own lives for the sake of others. As we commemorate that awful day and its victims and heroes, let us learn to live in peace with our neighbors, regardless of the color of their skin, their creed, or nationality. Peace is more than the absence of worry. It is the creation of safe havens for all. It is the building of security for everyone. It is the forgiveness of self as well as one who would harm you. Let us seek contentment. Let us seek peace. Peace is more than the absence of discordance. It is the intent listening to diverse points of view. It is the intentional speaking of all voices, one at a time. It is the tension within silence that welcomes all thoughts. Let us seek harmony. Let us seek peace. Peace is more than the absence of tension. It is studying the hard lessons of letting go. It is breathing through pain into tranquility. It is forming friendship out of enmity. Let us seek serenity. Let us learn peace. Peace is much more than the absence of war. It is observing the promised truth when anger would say no. It is finding the just compromise when ego would say, my way. It is striving for reconciliation when the heart would say, revenge. Let us seek amity for all the earth. Let us learn peace. Amen.
Next, I'd like to invite the Honorable Mayor Philip Kramer.
Thank you. I remember the day with some pain, but did everybody get to see the picture of the rainbow over the World Trade Center yesterday? It was beautiful. About 3 weeks after the incident, my wife and I went down to New York City. We had to see it. I remember seeing the skeleton of the structures standing there like some kind of weird waffle iron. I remember the smell. I remember the crowds and how polite the crowds were. I remember stopping to buy anything I could to pump money into the city. But what I also remember beyond the horror of 9/11 was the unity of 9/12. We were one country, and we were united together under one cause. I despise 9/11, but I yearn for 9/12. I'm to read the names of those that were from Franklin that were lost. John Collins, Stephen Joseph, Ganesh K. Ladkat, Vanessa O. Richards, Jeffrey Robinson, Shirley L. Rosenbaum. Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to invite Rabbi Eli Garfinkel from Temple Beth El for our closing benediction.
Good evening. The attacks of September 11th, 2001 occurred slightly more than 8,000 days ago. For some, especially those who lost loved ones, it has been 8,000 days of mourning, sadness, and loss. In one sense, 8,000 days was a very long time ago. Think about what the world was like then, if you were around. I did have a cell phone. I don't recall texting on it. The major social media platforms had not yet been invented. Facebook and YouTube were still a few years away. In another sense, those 8,000 days might as well be 8 hours, because anyone over the age of 28 or so remembers September 11th as if it were yesterday. It is the day that changed our world forever. The 90s did not end in 1999, just like the 60s did not end in 1969. It can take a few years for a new decade to kick in. On September 11th, the 90s came to an abrupt end at 8:46 a.m. The 90s were great. I remember them. America was triumphant. The Soviet Union collapsed like a Jenga tower. The music was so much better. REM sang "Losing My Religion." Tupac was still alive. My friends and I all watched Friends and Seinfeld and ER. The economy was great. Inflation in 1998 was 1.6%. And then it all disappeared on a warm and sunny September 11th in 2001. And ever since then, I sometimes want to ask the manager, the capital M, for a refund of the past 22 years, a do-over. On my darker days, I want to tell God that the past 2 decades have been garbage. Think about it. It's been 22 years of terrorism, followed by war, then a severe recession, then God knows how many mass shootings, then political strife, then a worsening climate, then the pandemic, then racial tension, an insurrection in Washington, and a wave of poverty, drug abuse, and homelessness. Jews are allowed to complain to God and even be furious with God. We're just not allowed to ignore God. So I could shake my fist at the Holy One and say, Master of the universe, these past 22 years are unacceptable. I want a refund. I want you to rewind back to September 10th, 2001 and just redo the whole mess. We don't hear God's voice in the literal sense, of course. But if we did, I imagine that I know what God's answer would be. It would go something like this. Eli, just who do you think you are, Moses? It's not my fault that 9/11 could have been stopped, had it not been for the infighting between the CIA and the FBI. Your government knew what Osama bin Laden was doing. You just got caught sleeping on the job. The creator of the universe would continue and say, you go tell America, it's not my fault that you allowed there to be way more guns than people in your country. You tell the whole world that it's not my fault you pollute your planet as a pig befouls its sty. You tell them it's not my fault that your bank sold junk mortgages to millions of people who couldn't afford them. God would then say, it's not my fault that you allowed bitterness, racism, and hatred to drive your political process. It's not my fault that some of your misguided scientists literally engineered a virus that I never intended to make. and did dangerous experiments that had no good purpose. I didn't tell you to do that. God would go on to say, I gave humanity free will, so don't complain that you didn't use your free will correctly. All of that suffering was caused by the same sin, the sin of not loving each other anywhere near as much as you love yourselves. All you have to do is follow that simple commandment. Love each other as much as you love yourselves, and all of those problems, from terrorism to the end of the list, will go away. Finally, God would get personal with me and say, and by the way, Eli, how dare you say that the last 22 years have been garbage? The past 22 years have been great. There was a lot of joy during that time, including the birth of your own children. So that's my prayer. All of our religions have a version of Leviticus 19:18 embedded in them. Love your neighbor as yourself. May God give all 8 billion of us the strength to follow that universal law as if our lives depended upon it. Because you know what? They do. Thank you.
So before we close out here, I do want to just say thank you to Rajiv Prasad, to Bob LaCourte, and to Bob Vornlocker, whose vision created this memorial many years ago and gives us a place to gather as a community and pay our respects to those folks who lost their lives. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to the bagpipes to take us away. Thank you very much.
Well, Franklin, that concludes the 9/11 Patriot Day commemoration for this date, Tuesday, September 12th. And it's so poignantly put by our mayor, Phil Kramer. Yes, 9/11 was the actual date of the tragedy in which 6 Franklin lives were lost. But he is cherishing, as he does every year, how people came together in this country and in this community on 9/12. That was today. Live from the Franklin Township 9/11 Memorial, this is PJ Parker saying thank you for tuning in.